Hi Year 3. Today I'm going to read you Chapter 4 of Fantastic Mr. Fox. And Chapter 4 is called The Terrible Shovels. So you can gather what's about to happen from the title of the chapter. As with before, I will put the Vipers questions up before I do the reading and afterwards, and you can pause the video at any time you need to if you need to check anything. If you want to write your answers down, that's fine, or if you want to say them out loud, that's fine. And then we'll go through the answers together at the end. Okay, I hope you're all well, and I hope you're enjoying our story. Bye! So, Year 3, we are going to start Chapter 4 now. And Chapter 4 is called The Terrible Shovels. So that might give you a bit of an idea about what's about to happen. Down in the hole, Mrs. Fox was tenderly licking the stump of Mr. Fox's tail to stop it bleeding. "It was the finest tail for miles around," she said, between licks. "It hurts," said Mr. Fox. "I know it does, sweetheart, but it will soon get better." "And it will soon grow again, Dad," said one of the small foxes. "It will never grow again," said Mr. Fox. "I shall be tailless for the rest of my life." He looked very glum. Okay, so remember, one of the Viper's questions was about the word glum and what it means. Think about why Mr. Fox is very glum in this picture. Let's see what happens next. There was no food for the foxes that night, and soon the children dozed off. Then Mrs. Fox dozed off. But Mr. Fox couldn't sleep because of the pain in the stump of his tail. I'll just pause there, because that's another one of our Viper's questions. Why do you think there was no food that night for the foxes? Have a think and write down your answer. But Mr. Fox couldn't sleep because of the pain in the stump of his tail. "Well," he thought, "I suppose I'm lucky to be alive at all. And now they've found our hole, we're going to have to move out as soon as possible. We'll never get any peace if we—" What was that? He turned his head sharply and listened. The noise he heard now was the most frightening noise a fox can ever hear. The scrape, scrape, scraping of shovels digging into the soil. "Wake up!" he shouted. "They're digging us out!" Mrs. Fox was wide awake in 1 second. She sat up, quivering all over. "Are you sure that's it?" she whispered. "I'm positive. Listen! Oh, they'll kill my children!" cried Mrs. Fox. "Never," said Mr. Fox. "But, darling, they will," sobbed Mrs. Fox. "You know they will." Scrunch, scrunch, scrunch went the shovels above their heads. Small stones and bits of earth began falling from the roof of the tunnel. "How will they kill us, Mummy?" asked one of the small foxes. His round black eyes were huge with fright. "Will they be dogs?" he said. Mrs. Fox began to cry. She gathered her 4 children close to her and held them tight. Suddenly there was an especially loud crunch above their heads, and the sharp end of a shovel came right through the ceiling. Oh my goodness me. You can see it just poking through the ceiling. The sight of this awful thing seemed to have an electric effect upon Mr. Fox. He jumped up and shouted, "I've got it! Come on! There's not a moment to lose. Why didn't I think of it before?" Okay, so this is the part of the text that tells you about Mr. Fox's plan, so make sure you pay attention. "Think of what, Dad?" "A fox can dig quicker than a man," shouted Mr. Fox, beginning to dig. "Nobody in the world can dig as quick as a fox." The soil began to fly out furiously behind Mr. Fox as he started to dig for dear life with his front feet. Mrs. Fox ran forward to help. So did the 4 children. "Go downwards," ordered Mr. Fox. "We've got to go deep as deep as we possibly can." The tunnel began to grow longer and longer. It sloped steeply downwards. Deeper and deeper below the surface of the ground it went. The mother and father of all 4 of the children were digging together. Their front legs were moving so fast you couldn't see them, and gradually the scrunching and scraping of the shovels became fainter and fainter. And after about an hour, Mr. Fox stopped digging. "Hold it," he said, and they all stopped. They turned and looked back up the long tunnel they had just dug. All was quiet. "Phew," said Mr. Fox. "I think we've done it. They'll never get as deep as this. Well done, everyone." So there they are, digging furiously, all together. They all sat down, panting for breath, and Mrs. Fox said to her children, "I should like you to know that if it wasn't for your father, we should all be dead by now. Your father is a fantastic fox." Mr. Fox looked at his wife and smiled. He loved her more than ever when she said things like that. Okay. So, quick look at the next page. That will be chapter 5 for next time. So have a look back at the Vipers questions now. You can go back on the video at any time, write down your answers, and then I'll share with you my answers, and we'll see how you got on. So now we're going to look at the answers to the Vipers questions for chapter 4. The first question was a vocabulary question. And remember, that means you need to explain what a word means from the text. The question was, what does the word glum mean? So have a think about your answer, or have a check over your answers, and then we'll have a look at mine and compare. Glum means gloomy, dejected, unhappy, or fed up. Now, if you notice, I haven't included the word sad in that list. Glum can also mean sad, but at this point in your learning, you should be able to think of some more alternatives that are a bit more interesting. Question 2 was an inference question. Why was there no food that night? So remember, with an inference question, you need to think about what you know about what you've read or heard so far. So let's have a look. There was no food that night because Mr. Fox was too frightened and injured to hunt. Okay, let's have a look at the next question. The next one is an explain question. So you need to think about what you know already about chapter 4 and explain something that's happened. So, explain Mr. Fox's plan when he hears the farmers coming. So this might mean you might need to think of a longer answer. You might need to write down some more sentences. His plan was to dig furiously for dear life. They needed to dig as deep as possible. Now, in my answer, I have looked back in the book and I have used the word furiously and the phrase for dear life because they were in the text. I've also looked back in the text and taken the phrase to dig as deep as possible and used that in my answer. Okay, so those are our answers for chapter 4. Have a look over yours, see if you can compare them, and you can always send them to your teacher using your class website. So I hope you've enjoyed chapter 4. We will move on to chapter 5 next, where Boggis, Bunce and Bean have an alternative plan. So I wonder what will happen next. See you soon. Bye.